Her true story from Atlanta, Georgia. My daughter told me, "Mom, you don't need to come this summer. Kevin thinks it's better if we keep the lake house for our family." After I built it, after every nail, every dollar, every dream I pressed into those walls came from me. So I sold it. They drove up for the 4th of July and found a stranger's car in the driveway. The voicemail came on a Tuesday at 6:47 the evening. I know the exact time because I was standing at the stove, stirring a pot of chicken and dumplings, the recipe my husband Samuel taught me the year we got married. He always said the secret was patience. You stir slow, you wait, you don't rush the broth. 41 years of marriage, and that was the lesson that stuck. Patience. I had the phone on speaker because my hands were wet. My daughter's voice filled the kitchen like cold air through a cracked window. "Hey, Mom! So listen, Kevin and I were talking, and we think this summer it might be best if you don't come up to the lake house. You know, the kids are getting older, they want to bring friends, and Kevin's parents are flying in from Denver, and it's just... there's not enough room. You understand, right? We'll figure out another time. Love you." She didn't wait for me to respond. The message ended with a click and the automated voice asking if I wanted to save or delete. I turned off the stove. The dumplings sat half-cooked in the pot. I didn't eat that night. My name is Dorothy Mae Hastings. I am 68 years old. I was a registered nurse for 34 years at Grady Memorial Hospital in Atlanta. I delivered babies, held dying men's hands, cleaned wounds that would make most people faint, and never once called in sick. I retired at 62, not because I was tired, but because Samuel got diagnosed, and I wanted every remaining minute with him. He passed 14 months later. Pancreatic cancer. The kind that doesn't negotiate. After he died, I made a promise. Not a dramatic one, not the kind you announce at a funeral while everyone watches. A quiet one, whispered into the empty side of the bed where his pillow still held the shape of his head. I told him I would build the lake house, the one we always talked about, the one he sketched on napkins at restaurants and measured with his eyes every time we drove past Lake Oconee. He wanted a place where the grandkids could fish off the dock and the whole family would sit on the porch and watch the sun drop behind the pines. He wanted a fire pit. He wanted a screen door that slapped shut when kids ran through it. He wanted a place that smelled like cedar and sunscreen and belonged to us. So I built it. Not overnight. Not easily. I took every penny of the life insurance, combined it with my retirement savings, and bought a lot on the east side of the lake. The land alone cost me $87,000. Then came the construction. I hired a local contractor named Earl who had hands like baseball mitts and a voice like gravel. He built the frame. I chose everything else: the pine floors, the stone fireplace, the wraparound porch with the swing facing west so you could watch the sunset without turning your neck. I picked the color of the front door myself, sage green, because Samuel always said green was the color of home. It took 11 months. I drove up from Atlanta every other weekend to check on the progress. I brought Earl coffee and sandwiches. I swept sawdust from the porch before the railings were even finished. When the kitchen was done, I stood in the center of it alone and cried so hard the sound bounced off the empty walls and came back to me like an echo from another life. I named it Samuel's Rest, not on a sign or anything official, just in my heart. That's what it was. A resting place for a love that never got to retire. The first summer, I invited everyone. My daughter Lorraine, her husband Kevin, their 3 kids. My younger son David, who lived in Charlotte and worked too much. My sister Pauline, who had bad knees but a good spirit. I stocked the fridge with enough food for 2 weeks. I bought fishing rods, pool floats, board games, bug spray by the gallon. I made a welcome basket for each grandchild with their names stitched on a hand towel and a jar of homemade peach jam inside. That first summer was everything Samuel would have wanted. The kids swam until their fingers wrinkled. Lorraine sat on the porch swing reading novels while Kevin grilled ribs. David played guitar by the fire pit after dark. Pauline and I sat in Adirondack chairs and talked about things we hadn't spoken of in years. Mama's sweet potato pie recipe. Daddy's laugh. The summer we all got lice at Bible camp and Mama shaved our heads and told us we looked like baby birds. I set Samuel's photo on the mantel above the fireplace. No one moved it. No one questioned it. That's the thing about love that's real. It doesn't need an explanation. It just sits there, steady as stone. The second summer, things shifted. Not like an earthquake, more like furniture being rearranged when you're not in the room. You come back and nothing looks broken, but nothing feels right either. Kevin started making suggestions. The dock should be extended. The fire pit needs a gas line instead of wood. The guest room would work better as a home office, since he was working remotely now. Lorraine echoed everything he said, the way a mirror echoes a face without adding anything of its own. I noticed she stopped asking if I needed help in the kitchen. She stopped sitting with me on the porch in the mornings. Instead, she and Kevin would take the kids out on a rented boat and come back sunburned and laughing, and I would be standing at the screen door holding a pitcher of lemonade no one had asked for. At Thanksgiving that year, they came to my house in Atlanta, and Lorraine pulled me aside after dinner. "Mom," Kevin and I were thinking, "since we use the lake house more than anyone, maybe it would make sense to put it in our names. For tax purposes. You know, simplify things." I looked at her. My daughter. My firstborn. The girl I held against my chest when she was 4 minutes old and already screaming like she had something to say. I searched her face for a trace of guilt, or at least awareness. There was none. "She said it the way you'd ask someone to pass the salt." "It's in my name," I said. "That's where it stays." She smiled. Not warmly. More like a door closing softly. "Okay, Mom." Just a thought. But it wasn't just a thought. Thoughts don't come with follow-up emails from a real estate attorney named Bradley Collins. 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, I received a letter at my house. On official letterhead, it suggested a voluntary transfer of property ownership for the lake house to Lorraine and Kevin Mitchell, citing primary use and upkeep as justification. It included a signature line for me at the bottom. I read it 3 times. Then I folded it, slipped it back into the envelope, and placed it in the drawer beside my bed. The same drawer where I kept Samuel's reading glasses and our wedding rings. I did not call Lorraine. I did not call the attorney. I sat in the chair by the window, the one Samuel used to call the thinking seat, and I let myself feel every layer of what had just happened. My daughter had hired a lawyer to take my house. The house I built with my husband's dream and my own money. The house that still had his photo on the mantel and his initials carved into the dock post because I had asked Earl to do it as a surprise and then cried when I saw it finished. I wasn't angry. I was something deeper than that. The months that followed were a slow education in disappearing. Lorraine called less. When she did, the conversations were short, clipped, full of Kevin's opinions delivered through her mouth. She mentioned the lake house often, always casually. "Kevin's parents are coming to the lake house for Easter." Not asking, telling. "We had the dock repainted. Hope you don't mind." I did mind. I minded very much, but I said nothing. Because I was watching. I was learning what they thought of me. And what they thought was this, that I was old, that I was soft, that I would eventually sign whatever they put in front of me, because mothers always do, because that's what mothers are for, To give and give and give until there's nothing left, and then to be quiet about it. They changed the lock in April. Kevin told me it was because the old one was rusted. He gave me a new key, but when I drove up in May to check on the house, the key didn't work. I stood on the porch I had designed, looking through the window at the fireplace I had chosen, holding a key that opened nothing. I called Lorraine. "Oh, Kevin must have gotten a different lock. I'll get you a copy. Don't worry about it." She never sent the copy. That night, I sat in my car in the driveway of the lake house and stared at the sage green door. I thought of Samuel. I thought of his napkin sketches and his quiet laughter and the way he used to say, "Dot, one day we'll have a place where nobody can tell us to leave." And here I was, being told to leave. By my own blood, I drove back to Atlanta. 4 hours in the dark with the radio off and the windows down because the night air kept me from crying. When I got home, I went straight to my desk. I opened the filing cabinet where I kept every document related to the lake house. Deed of ownership, Dorothy May Hastings. Sole proprietor. No co-signers, no transfer, no amendments. I had never signed that letter from the attorney. The house was mine. The house had always been mine. I closed the cabinet and made myself a cup of chamomile tea. I sat in the thinking seat, and I thought, not about revenge, about clarity. The next morning, I called my own attorney, a woman named Grace Okafor who had helped me with Samuel's estate. I told her everything. The voicemail, the letter from Kevin's attorney, the changed locks, the slow, deliberate erasure. She listened without interrupting. Then she said, "Dorothy, they have no legal standing. That house is yours." "Anything?" I asked. "Anything." I thanked her and hung up. Then I opened my laptop and typed 2 words into a search bar. Lake Oconee Real Estate Agents. I didn't make any decisions that day. Instead, I gave Lorraine one final chance. I called her, not to beg, not to confront, just to see. "Hey, baby. I was thinking about coming up to the lake house next weekend. Maybe bring some of that peach jam the kids liked." A pause. Then that voice, the one that used to call me Mama and now called me a problem. "Mom, I told you, Kevin's parents are there through the month. It's just easier if you wait." "Maybe August?" "August," I repeated. "Yeah, we'll figure it out." She hung up first. She always hung up first. Now, that was June 14th. On June 16th, I listed the lake house for sale. I priced it at $340,000. The market was hot. Lake Oconee properties were moving fast. Within 9 days, I had 3 offers. I accepted the highest one, $361,000, from a retired couple from Savannah who told me they planned to spend every Christmas there with their grandchildren. I shook their hands and smiled because I knew they meant it. The closing was scheduled for July 2nd, 2 days before the 4th of July, the same 4th of July that Lorraine and Kevin had planned to spend at the lake house with his parents. The same lake house where they had changed the lock and removed my welcome and rearranged a dead man's dream to suit their comfort. I did not tell them. I signed the papers at Grace's office. She handed me the check. I folded it and placed it in my purse beside a photograph of Samuel standing on the unfinished porch, grinning like a man who had found exactly where he belonged. "You okay?" Grace asked. "Better than I've been in years," I said. On July 3rd, Lorraine called. Her voice was different. High-pitched, frantic. "Mom, what happened to the lake house? Kevin's parents just pulled up and there are strangers on the porch. Someone said they bought it. Mom, what is going on?" I let the silence sit for 3 full seconds. Then I spoke. I sold it. Lorraine. You what? I sold the lake house. My lake house. The one I built. The one you tried to take from me with a lawyer's letter and a changed lock and a voicemail telling me not to come. She started to talk, but I wasn't finished. You told me there wasn't enough room. You told me Kevin's parents needed the space. You told me to wait until August like I was a guest in a house I built with my own hands and my dead husband's dream. So I made room, Lorraine. I made room for people who deserve it. Mom, you can't just— I already did, and I want you to hear me clearly, because I'm only going to say this once. I am 68 years old. I spent 34 years taking care of other people's bodies. I spent 41 years taking care of your father. I spent 3 years building that house so this family would have a place to remember him. And what did you do? You changed the locks. You hired a lawyer. You told me not to come. So don't you dare stand there and act confused about why the door is closed. She was crying now. I could hear Kevin in the background, his voice sharp, demanding. I didn't care. I love you, Lorraine. I will always love you, but I will not be erased by the people I built my life around. Not anymore. I hung up. And I meant every word. The calls came like clockwork after that. Lorraine, Kevin, even Kevin's mother, a woman I had been nothing but kind to. The voicemails piled up, some angry, some pleading. Kevin left one that said, "This is a family matter and you've turned it into a legal nightmare." As if I hadn't been the one holding the family together since Samuel died. As if family was a word that only mattered when they needed something from me. David called too. My son. But his voice was different. Quiet. Careful. Mom, I heard what happened. Are you okay? I'm fine, baby. I just want you to know. I'm not mad. I think you did what you had to do. I pressed the phone against my chest and held it there for a moment. Then I brought it back to my ear. Thank you, David. Dad would have done the same thing, he said. I smiled so hard my face ached. The money from the sale sat in my account for 2 weeks. $361,000. I didn't touch it. Not because I didn't know what to do with it, but because I wanted to be sure. I had spent 3 years building something out of love, and I had watched it be taken apart by entitlement. I would not make that mistake again. This time, every dollar would go where it was felt, where it was honored. I started with a list. I wrote it by hand on a yellow legal pad, sitting at my kitchen table with the ceiling fan clicking above me. At the top, I wrote, "The women who stayed. Hattie, 73. My neighbor for 22 years. She raised 4 grandchildren after her daughter went to prison, and not one of them had called her since they turned 18. She still kept their school photos on the mantle. Ernestine, 70. She drove the church van every Sunday for 15 years, never missed a pickup, never asked for gas money. Her husband left her for a woman half her age, and she told me once, "I don't miss him. I miss who I thought he was." Claudette, 69. Retired postal worker. She had a bad hip and a good heart and hadn't left the state of Georgia in 11 years. When I asked her once where she'd go if she could go anywhere, she said, "Somewhere with an ocean." I've never heard waves. Roslyn, 66. A former school principal who now lived alone in a house too big for one person. She sang in the choir every Sunday, her voice the loudest in the room, and then went home to eat dinner by herself in front of the television. Pearl, 71. She had buried 2 husbands and 1 son. She told me once at a church dinner, "People think I'm strong because I don't cry in public. But I cry every night, Dorothy. Every single night." I called each of them, 5 phone calls, 5 stunned silences. You want to take me where? Hilton Head Island, dear. 1 week. Ocean view. My treat. But why? Because I have the money, and I have the love, and I'm done giving both to people who waste them. I booked a beachfront house on Hilton Head, 6 bedrooms, a wide porch, a view of the Atlantic that would make you believe in God if you didn't already. I requested a long dining table, the kind with enough room for everyone to sit together without anyone being pushed to the side. I shipped a box ahead of us with candles, a guest book, and the framed photograph of Samuel, the one where he's standing on the half-built porch, laughing at something I said that neither of us could remember. When we arrived, I set his photo in the center of the dining table. Ernestine touched the frame gently. He looks like a man who knew how to love, she said. He was, I said. He was exactly that. That first night, we sat on the porch and listened to the ocean. Nobody spoke for a long time. The waves came in and went out like breathing, and we just sat there, 6 women in rocking chairs, feeling something that none of us had felt in years. Permission. Permission to exist without being useful? To take up space without apologizing for it? To be somewhere beautiful without having earned it through suffering? Claudette was the first to cry. She stood at the edge of the porch, looking out at the water, and the tears came quietly, rolling down her cheeks and catching the porch light. I can hear them, she whispered. The waves. They sound like applause. We spent that week doing nothing important and everything meaningful. We cooked breakfast together. We walked the beach barefoot. We took photographs of each other. Not selfies. Real photographs. The kind where someone else holds the camera and tells you to smile and you don't have to fake it because you already are. Hattie sat in the sand one morning and built a sandcastle with her bare hands like she was 8 years old. Pearl swam in the ocean for the first time in her life and came out shouting, "I'm not afraid of anything anymore." Rosalind sang on the porch after dinner and the neighbors came out to listen. And for a moment, she wasn't alone. She was the center of something. Every evening, we lit a candle beside Samuel's photo. Each woman said one thing she wished someone had told her when she was younger. Hattie said, "You are allowed to stop giving." Ernestine said, "The right person won't make you feel small." Claudette said, "You don't have to be strong all the time." Rosalind said, "Silence is not peace. It's just silence." Pearl said, "Grief doesn't mean your life is over. It means your love was real." And when it was my turn, I looked at Samuel's face in that photo, and I said, "You were never a burden. You were the reason." On the last night, we walked to the shore. The moon hung low and full, turning the water silver. We stood in a line, 6 women with bare feet and full hearts, and we let the waves wash over our ankles. Nobody said this was healing. Nobody called it therapy or self-care or empowerment. It was simpler than that. It was just women being seen, finally, quietly, completely seen. The email from Lorraine arrived 3 weeks after I got home. I was in the kitchen making peach jam. Samuel's recipe, the one that required more patience than sugar. My laptop sat open on the counter, and the notification chimed. Subject: "Can we talk?" I opened it. "Mom, I know things have been difficult. Kevin and I have been going through a lull since the lake house situation. We had to cancel our 4th of July plans, obviously, and the kids were really upset. Kevin's parents had to get a hotel at the last minute, and it was embarrassing for everyone. I'm not saying you were wrong to feel hurt. Maybe we should have communicated better. Kevin admits he could have handled the lock thing differently. And maybe the attorney letter was too much. We were just trying to be practical. But here's the thing, Mom. We're in a tough spot financially. Kevin's bonus didn't come through and the kids' school tuition is due next month. I was wondering if you could help. Not a lot. Maybe $15,000 to cover the gap? We're still family. I know we've had our differences, but I don't want money to come between us. Let me know. Love. I read it twice. Then I read it one more time to make sure I wasn't imagining things. She didn't apologize. She explained. She rationalized. She mentioned Kevin's embarrassment as if it were a wound equal to mine. And then, at the bottom, like a receipt stapled to the back of a sympathy card, she asked for money, $15,000. From the mother she locked out of her own house. From the woman she tried to erase from the property deed. From the person she told not to come. I thought about the women on Hilton Head. About Claudette hearing the ocean for the first time. About Pearl swimming with her arms stretched wide. About the candle burning beside Samuel's photograph, while 6 women spoke truth into the night. Then I thought about this email. This small, selfish, familiar email, the kind that assumes a mother's love, is a bank account with no withdrawal limit. The kind that confuses guilt with generosity and silence with consent. I hovered the cursor over the reply button. Then I closed the laptop. There was nothing to say. Because if you have to explain to your own daughter why you won't fund the life of someone who locked you out of your own home, then the explanation was never the problem. The listening was. I went back to my jam. I stirred it slow, the way Samuel taught me. The kitchen smelled like summer and sugar and something that might have been peace. I thought about that green door. The sage green front door I had chosen for the lake house. I thought about standing on the other side of it, holding a key that no longer worked, looking through the window at a life someone had rearranged without my permission. And then I thought about a different door, the one at the Hilton Head house, the one Claudette walked through for the first time and gasped because she could see the ocean from the entryway. The one Hattie propped open with a sandal so the breeze could come through. The one that was never locked. Not once. That's the difference between a house and a home. A house has locks. I turned off the stove and poured the jam into mason jars. 6 of them, 1 for each woman. I would mail them tomorrow with a note inside each lid, a single line. The same line Samuel used to say to me every morning before he left for work, before the cancer, before the silence, before all of it. You are my favorite place. Because they were, those women, those ordinary, extraordinary, forgotten, beautiful women. They were the place I had been looking for. Not a lake house, not a beachfront villa, not a family that only wanted me when I was paying, just a table long enough for everyone. Just a door that stayed open. Just a candle burning steady in the center of it all, casting light on the faces of people who finally, mercifully, felt like home. If this story found you, if you've ever built something beautiful and watched it be taken by the people you built it for, if you've ever stood on the wrong side of a door you paid for, then you belong here. This is Spirit Tales, where forgotten women become unforgettable. Where silence becomes strength, where the love you gave away comes back to you in ways you never expected. If you believe that kindness is not weakness and being overlooked is not the end of your story but the beginning of a better one, then subscribe to Spirit Tales today.